I guess most of you, many of you, have been spiritual seekers, I guess. And there's a desire to want to insist and make very clear that this is not a spiritual meeting, that what I'm speaking about is not in any sense spiritual. By that I mean this is natural. So what I attempt to speak about is nature. Not something else. And I think the search is the sense many human beings have that there's something more. There's something beyond, something hidden, something just out of reach that is maybe occasionally glimpsed. Now, I'm not suggesting that the glimpses, however your experience of glimpses have appeared, whatever they felt like, however special you made them, what I'm suggesting is that they're not special in any way at all. Putting the kettle on and making your coffee is just as significant and wondrous as your most sublime spiritual awakening experience of oneness. Now that most people don't want to hear that, because what self does with an experience is make it significant, of great importance, attach huge meaning to it. Now, I'm not saying they're not beautiful. Any of those experiences that you had that were beautiful and were ecstatic or sublime, I'm not saying they weren't that. I'm saying they're of no significance. They don't mean anything. And it's the attachment to meaning that seems to die. So no longer is there a difference between what we would call mundane, everyday life and the mystical, the magical, the wonderful. All of life is wonderful, whether it has wonder or not, whether there is wonder. Boredom and wonder are not two. Just experiences. But the wonder is that there isn't this and that. But as me, that's all I can do is say that that's of significance and that's not. So most of life is dismissed by self as irrelevant, insignificant, not special, because the whole drive of self is to be special, to become special. And of course, one of the ways I do that is by seeking special experiences. So all experience is special in its ordinariness. There can be disappointment in this because you've been holding on, I have been holding on to those experiences that I had that make me special because I'm like the special ones, the other special ones who have had similar experiences. So I'm not like the rest of you, living out your mundane, boring, insignificant lives. I'm special. That's the ultimate ego trip, really, the spiritual one. Not the ultimate, whether you're seeking stardom and fame or wealth or as many lovers as possible. It's still just seeking more experience. And I just think it seems very obvious that spirituality is just another form of materialism for self. It's just can't get enough. Just like you can't get enough money. You can't get enough spiritual experience. You can't get enough highs. So what I'm trying to speak about is not an experience. It's all experience. No experience more than another. And I just know, I'm saying this because I know how attached I was to experiences, how much investment I had in those. And that is what led to seeking more. So I wanted more of the same, but I wanted better as well, of course. And it's no different to getting a car. A spiritual awakening experience is no different to getting a car. You get a lovely car, the car that you've most desired, and within 2 weeks, you hear of another car, you see another car, someone tells you of another, your neighbor gets another car. It's just, in spiritual circles, it's exactly the same. Someone tells you of their experience, so you want that. Well, you won't get that. I guess that's the disappointment. No one gets that. You don't even get this, let alone that. This isn't for anyone. It can be a devastating realization or just an obviousness that life doesn't give a shit about you. It's not that it doesn't give a shit about you, it's just there's no recognition because you're not separate from life. There is no you and life. There is no you that has a life. There's no you being alive. So there's no you to be dead. Just this incredible aliveness. This is alive. Undoubtedly, there's no, aliveness can't be doubted, but you can't find the aliveness because there's just being alive. It's too simple. I mean, there's just no separation between the aliveness because there isn't aliveness and. Simply nothing else. And that can not only feel disappointing, feel really devastating because in a very real sense, there is nowhere to go. There's nowhere else. So simply, this is the entirety. This is all and nothing. So even nothing isn't somewhere else. So rather than fantasize about where else there might be, as a reality, as a dimension, beyond, there isn't even nothing beyond. Nothing is ever present. And although it may feel devastating to the one who's, because it's a change of a habit, the habit is seeking, looking for whatever you've desired. And when there's nowhere to go and nothing to do, nothing to be done in order to attain, and by that I mean the whole desire just evaporates. The desire to find whatever you have imagined you're looking for. That's the peace. The motivation to speak about this comes from peace. And the peace is the end of the belief, the end of the possibility that there's anything else. So although it may feel devastating, there is an incredible peace in that. It's rest. This is, regardless of the appearance, this is always completely at rest. So it's not lost on me that rest in peace is how we refer to the dead. So it's not that you die, there's no you to die. There is only death, which is completely alive. Won't make any sense. Not rationally. But there'll be no fear of death. If there's no one to die.
Tim, is that what you mean by death? That there already isn't anyone?
Really? I mean, there's no fear of death if there's no one to die. There could still be fear of dying, not death. I've witnessed people dying, and you can make up romantic fantasies about what it looks like, but usually it's really nasty, unpleasant, painful. And for selves full of fear, terror. But not death itself. Really, I mean that there's no fear of death because death is present. And by death, I mean emptiness is the same as death. Yeah. Nothing is death. Yeah. I'm jolly today, aren't I? Well, we really have a taboo around death still. Most cultures still do. It's not just in the West. Most cultures still have You know, we're happy to talk about sex now, but not really death. You know, because for most people, death is something that's waiting for us. The Grim Reaper is waiting. If it's undeniable that this is always passing away, nothing remains, but all appearance just passes away as it appears. I spoke about this yesterday. It can, I don't know how, but it can be obvious that this appearance has already disappeared. This appearance has passed away. The whole illusion, which is powerful, and it does remain, by the way, the illusion doesn't disappear, otherwise you really wouldn't function as a human being. The illusion of continuity has to remain. So, you know, I look this way, they've all gone. Really, they don't exist. And if I turn back and, fucking hell, where'd you lot come? So the illusion, it's not that, you know, it's a functional illusion of continuity. That things remain and have existence. It's not true. Nothing has an existence. Nothing continues. So in an absolute sense, there are no things. Even human body things, you know. In an absolute. But in the relative, of course they do. But absolutely there are no things. And it may seem to take a bit of getting used to if that is obvious, that there aren't any things, that there's still the appearance of things. That may seem conflicting, you know, that because that's not rational. There can't be things and there not be things. And yet there are. Relatively there are. Absolutely there isn't. Absolutely there's nothing.
Tim, what do you mean by relative and absolute?
Relative.
Relative, do you mean the organic material which...
Relatively, I mean in relation, in relation, so you exist in relation to. So this body exists in relation to that body.
Because my brain perceives...
In terms of trying to scientifically explain it, I leave all that to scientists. I tend not to get into that.
That's what you mean by relative. From a scientific...
I mean, yeah, that how science works is in relativity, yeah, all of science. But actually not just science, the whole of human functioning is relative. All communication is relative, object and subject, so all of language is relative. Everything is relative. Well, the absolute can't be spoken of, so everything we say is relative. That's what I mean.
Is that...
In that it's in language, and all languages, words only relate to things, don't they? And whether you want to go down the road of whether things exist without words or not, is you can. I mean, I leave it to philosophers for all of that. That's fine. You could debate it all day, that kind of thing. But what I mean is that everything we speak, all communication, every thought, it's all relative. There are no absolute thoughts. And what is there without thoughts? What exists without thought? What do you think would exist without thought? But whatever you say, whatever you come up with, it's just another relative idea. It's just ideas. So what can be, again, very hugely relaxing and the great peace in it is the doubtless uncertainty, the doubtless not knowing of the absolute. So there's no longer, if it's undoubted that no one has ever known the absolute, because if you know that, if there's any knowledge of the absolute, then that's relative. All knowledge is relative. So this, of course, is immediately not the absolute and has nothing to do with it. So there can be, it just absolutely kills all seeking because of the impossibility of knowledge. Knowledge is then really what it is, which is human beings' entertainment for no reason. It loses all its weight, and you know how weighty that search for the truth is. It's a bitch. Yeah. It's dreadful. Can be a lot of fun until it's not. And then you end up at a non-duality meeting. You know, the search for truth, that's the spiritual search that can be great. You know, you could say it's like the greatest adventure. I've met a lot of spiritual seekers, and they will tell you endless tales of their great adventures, and then they'll tell you theirs, and then you'll go to tell them yours, and immediately you can see they've glazed over because this is, you know, that's how the search is. It's really only my search that matters. And whoever you've made as my friend in the States would say, your guru du jour. She made me her guru du jour in a mocking fashion. Because you know how, as a seeker, I thought he was the one. I thought she was the one. It's just like lovers. Teachers and lovers, just the same. She's the one. She will show me the truth. She will lead me to salvation. Well, there can be no path to here. And there's only here. There was no getting here. There's no arrival. That's why I say that there can be a sense of disappointment. This is devastating. It kills hope, absolutely. And just the admission that you've lived in hope can feel devastating. But then the realization or the undeniable fact that this is it, and that leaves nowhere for hope to live. So it's not that you lose hope. Hope dies. The future dies. Now it doesn't die because it never existed, you know, really. So everything when we talk about the loss, you know, going from me to no me, I mean, there's just another spiritual fantasy. There isn't a me to go from me to being a no me, because who would be a no me? Well, it'd have to be me, wouldn't it? It's funny, but really.
I guess what might could be felt different is maybe how the body feels. It would like, I mean, my feels sort of very tense, contracted, I would say, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That could sort of be more, how to say, like relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh, you want something positive from me, don't you?
Yeah.
Give me something. Yeah.
I was just thinking of
More relaxed.
more noticeable difference.
I'm loath to give any, because who knows what the noticeable difference would be and how you would notice. You know, it's only in comparison. But if you wanted comparison, I'll give you a bit, shall I? Easier, much easier. Yeah, ease is probably the best word, because it's not very, it's very, it's not what a seeker would want. Ease, is that all you're going to get? You know, like, well, I wanted, is there no bliss? Well, maybe when the great ancient speakers talked about bliss, maybe they were just talking about ease. I don't know. Maybe that is bliss. Maybe ease is another way of describing the simplicity of being. I don't know.
It seems like Tim Cliss is smiling a lot. Couldn't that be bliss?
Yeah, but again, I mean, don't be fooled by the exterior. I could be in misery and I still smile. I mean, do you know those characteristics of how a human being appears? They're not going to change. So.
Couldn't that be
So
bliss if you're in misery still? Because the misery is like...
No. I smile a lot when I speak about this because it's funny. It's a joke. Life is funny. Tragically hilarious. Human beings in their endeavor to find whatever they think will bring them whatever they've fantasized they want. When of course none of it can happen. I don't smile all the time though. I cry a lot.
Just not here.
Just
not at the meetings.
No, not usually. I have done, but... Okay.
Is what you're saying is like when for example you're smiling, is it that there's only smiling, and when you're crying there's only crying?
Yeah.
There's no bliss kind of containing it, or?
I like what you said first time, that's pretty much.
All right.
Is it a thought that triggers emotions?
Oh yeah, well there's the game. I played that. Yeah, that's a therapeutic game of, so which comes first? It's like chicken or the egg kind of thing, or horse and egg. So does thought create feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have a thought and then the thought evokes the feeling.
Evokes, exactly.
That's cognitive behavioral therapy. Says that. And I did some training in that shit. And then, or is it the other way around? So there's a natural feeling, emotion, and then there's all the story then evolves from the feeling. Which do you think it is?
I have no idea.
Well, there you go. Well, your idea is as good as anyone else's. That's how I feel about that.
It just comes.
Well, the thing is, all of that collapses when there's no before and after. So
there's no sequence anymore.
Well, there's no causality.
Yeah.
So those questions are really for the one who wants to manage life and be in control. So if I understand thoughts, the thoughts create, I don't like these feelings I'm having. These feelings, sorrow, say, deep grief. And my therapist tells me that, or I've read a book and it tells me that the thoughts initiate that. So if I control the thoughts, then I'll control the feeling. So thought control is very popular, isn't it?
Yes.
Very. And of course, it can seem to be effective. It can seem to work. So of course, then that reinforces that it's true because it's relatively seems to be effective. No, I'm not saying it's not relatively effective. What I'm saying is that if it's seen that there is no cause and effect, because everything just appears as, because there is no before and after. Cause and effect only appear in time. So I have to tell the story of thought creates the feeling, to invest then into it. But there's no doubt that in the story, beliefs are powerful. So if I believe that this will be effective, then, I mean, we know that's virtually every field of human endeavor says, if you believe it, then it seems to me much more likely. But this kind of destroys any interest in that because, well, relatively it might be true, but it's just another story. A story of self-improvement, a story of now my life's better than it was because now I have greater understanding. What I've realized is that what there's the realization is I don't have any very little motivation to do much. And the reason for that is because all of my motivation was self-improvement. My whole life has just been a me project. That's what virtually all human beings call life, their life, is a project to improve myself, to become, and it's totally individual. Each human being will have their own bespoke dream of who they might become, of perfection, of becoming complete and whole and the best self, the successful self, the whole self. So without that, I mean, that's virtually all motivation. So it can feel devastatingly, what the fuck am I going to do? There's nothing to do. And that, because there is nothing to be done. There'd be a lot of sitting around. Well, to you were saying, you could sit for hours. Suddenly the wall is really interesting.
And before there was meaning, and now it's like meaningless.
Yeah. Or even if there's, the thing is, that might sound like there's never any thought of meaning. Or what does that mean? No, I don't mean that. I mean that meaning appears and the meaning doesn't mean anything. All meaning is meaningless. It's not that anything is no longer permitted. This isn't a state where things are no longer permitted to appear, especially, whatever you fantasize that you don't want to appear anymore. That's what you're seeking. Really, that's what I was seeking. So I was seeking to not feel emotional pain, really. That was number one. Well, I've got some really bad news on that. Emotional pain is much more emotional. I won't say painful. It could be more painful. I don't think it's more or less painful. But you could say more intense, because when there is sadness, when there's sorrow, there is just sorrow. The walls are weeping. I don't know if you've had that kind of experience where, you know, the trees are weeping, the sky is weeping on a sunny day. When there's sorrow, there's only sorrow. I think a lot of human endeavor is to control emotion. A lot of spiritual pursuit is to try and be free from. Well, there is no free from. There is no you to be free from anything. Everything is free. So this is freedom for everything naturally to appear as it appears. There's no freedom for you.
If there's emotional bluntness, then that continues.
Bluntness?
Yes. You don't feel
What do you
any
mean by
emotion.
bluntness?
There is no emotion. I don't feel extreme emotions for years now. It's like moving around like a dead body. It's been happening for, I don't know. Because I long for the emotions to come back, because there was joy, there was something happening to keep me occupied.
Well, that's so. All I can describe is how it is here, and it seems emotions are more direct, more unfiltered. That's what I'd say. But then, of course, then you're going, well, why have I not got that? Well, I mean, different body. I mean, I'm not talking about just because I'm describing experience. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, I think that's the whole problem with listening to any speaker or reading about any other human being's experiences. And this can sound like, okay, everything would be uniform. You know, it would be a uniform experience of awakening or enlightenment or whatever other fancy. No, of course not. No. There are vague similarities. I speak to other people quite a bit, and there are some similarities, but there's a lot more difference than there is similarity. Just as, because, of course, human beings are similar, but unique. This isn't a denial of human being. This is like a complete embrace of being human. As opposed to spirituality, which I always had the sense of, it was trying to escape into some...
Trying to get somewhere,
to escape the corporeal, the manifest, the bodily, into... Well, there's there's no greater duality than human beings saying, okay, so there's this existence, there's life, and life, we can divide it between the manifest, the physical, and the spiritual. I mean, just such a false duality. There's not. I mean, is that an experience of life, that it's separated into spiritual? It's the same, really, into feelings and thoughts to me as well. I mean, really, do you know the difference between feelings and thoughts? Are they separate? Does one come before the other? No, you can tell.
It appears to be, but it's just because I associated it in this fashion, so it seems like separate things.
Really, to come back to your point, just because I describe how it is here for me, doesn't mean that it's going to be like that. It's just how it is. Anyhow, always.
Do you have a preference of feelings, or is this just unconditional acceptance of whatever?
Now, there's nothing saintly about me, and the whole thing of surrender and acceptance, and that. No, I can be great resistance to it still. All the spiritual stories seem completely dead. I thought I worked on surrender and acceptance as a way, but resistance appears, or it can seem that acceptance appears, or it can appear that neither appear, and then there's.
It seems like what I hear you saying is like you prefer happiness to sadness, but I don't know if that's what you're telling. Yeah, I think there is still a preference. Yeah, but isn't there? But what there isn't is I think the difference. Again, we're just talking nonsense here about difference, but there's not the fear of sadness. That's the difference. It's not that it's not like liking sadness. No, sadness is sad. Actually, without the resistance to it, more sad. Sadness is sadder than before, actually. I can genuinely say that. Because what fear does, or resistance does, or working at it does, is distract from it. But so when there's no distraction from it, there's no it's like you can't turn your face away anymore. You haven't got a face to turn towards it. So it's not like acceptance of, okay, I'll really work into the therapeutic stuff of dive into it, fall into it, let it engulf you. Well, it's just none of that. But it's like you can neither go in or turn away. And then there is just, emotion is like that. When there's powerful emotion, it is everything. And self is terrified. This will fucking kill me. Wonder of wonders, if it fucking does kill you, there was no one to be killed. That's the wonder. It gets, I'm loath to say this, but this is most people's story. It has to get bad enough. If it's not bad enough, then you'll be doing something about it. And while you're doing something about it, me's back in control, like the sense of control. There isn't me, but the sense of managing, controlling, sorting it out. Do I do that? I wouldn't say, no, it doesn't feel like that. But there can be a sense of, oh, fuck. No, it can be like, oh, God, no. I can call to God, even though I'm a non-believer. Isn't it amazing how all atheists still have a chat with the big guy? I can still do that. If it got bad enough, I know I'd still pray. Isn't it? That's hilarious. But I'd be laughing about it though. I wouldn't stop. If it gets bad enough, we're all going to pray. And you don't have to know who you're praying. Isn't that funny? Any old God would do. You've been a devout Christian or a devout Hindu, and you had your God. You couldn't give a shit which God. Anyone listening?
Will you tell about the day in the woods where something happened or not happened? Will you tell about that day?
That's a great question.
What I'll say about that story, awakening story, is I never think about it. So if you're asking me, I'd rather leave it at that, really. This is what I said earlier, that as a seeker, I place great significance on that experience. A revelatory experience. Of course, it made me special. Like a Damascene revelation. Seeing the light, the veil being lifted. So I never think of, I can remember it. But only if you make me.
I make you.
Aren't memories like that? Memories just appear or not. And you could, seemingly by effort, you create. I don't doubt that if I tell you the story now, I'm making it up. It's absolutely, it's not what happened. A memory is never what happened. A memory is the illusion that it is what happened. And a memory is always new, in the same way as everything else is always new. So you want a new story? So I was a PE teacher. Fucking hell. I was 32 years old, yeah. I made that up. I've no idea how old I was. You know how you tell stories, and you know, it's just a complete abstraction. So I was a PE teacher, and every year I took kids on a outdoor pursuits trip to the hills in Derbyshire. And we did things like rock climbing and abseiling and canoeing. And this day was a hike. So we were hiking through the hills, and we were climbing. So I'm leading the group. There's two of us. There's another guy at the back. I think we had about 15 kids, 12-year-olds. And they're following me up this hill, this wooded. It's on the front of my book. A photograph of where it. That's it, yeah. That's the place. And as we were walking up, now I'm really making it up. So what happened as you were walking up? What's really obvious is nothing happened. And then after, I created a story about what had happened. So the story that I created after is the story. That's what I can tell you of. And because which a story is trying to make sense of what seemed to have happened, which was that the rocks were no longer outside me. They were also inside. I was no longer inside, I was also outside. So the description that I gave to myself
was that I was the rocks and the trees, and the rocks and the trees were me. And I knew the rocks and the trees, and the rocks and the trees knew me.
Beautiful.
That was my trying to make sense of, from my perspective. So in that sense, there were no rocks and trees, and there was no me. But there was also only me and only the rocks and trees. And usually, if I tell the story, people want to know, so how long did that last for? And it did not last for any time at all, because it wasn't even that I stopped walking. There was no time, and that was also apparent. That it wasn't an experience in time. It had no continuation. It wasn't. So did it last for seconds? No, not even seconds.
So who made up that story?
Pardon?
Who made up that story?
I just made it up.
But at that time,
Who made it up then? And when you just asked me that, there was a thought, I wonder when was the last time I thought of that? Or when was maybe the last time I was here? Because there's no significance in this, but that's not the experience now. It's not that I'm, because you hear some people say that, that is the experience of I am you and you are me, or I am in you and you are in me. There's no sense of that at all. I never had that experience again, or anything similar. And it's 29 years ago. So what I'm speaking of is not experiential. That's why experiences, and that experience is no more significant than any other as a memory. At the time, it was quite the contrary. It just seemed that I'd been shown something special. I guess what I want to say is that that's not how life is for Tim. It's not that experience became the norm. In a way, it's more extraordinary that it never happened again. And you probably can guess what I tried to do. I tried to recapture that. I kept going back to the place. I couldn't enroll. Then I would go on my own, of course. I couldn't, and then I thought, well, I need the kids with me. So I've got to go and round up 15, 12-year-olds. Because, I mean, this is the nature of seeking, isn't it? That there's an experience, and it was spectacular, it was extraordinary, and I want it again. Well, the wonder is that experience didn't happen. There is no possibility of recreation. There is no creation in the first place. That wasn't created. This isn't created. There is no going back or going forward. That's disappointing. But I mean, this is a familiar story with those who have what you might call awakening experiences, which that's typically, I mean, that's not like anyone else's awakening story or a story of an awakening experience, but it's similar. It's got similarities with virtually everyone I've ever read about or heard about. And what that seemed to do was then set off from the, what we'd call the normal pursuit of material seeking into spiritual seeking. I felt cheated. It's like I couldn't have it again. It's like, well, why not? Oh. And terribly frustrated. I mean, that's the frustration of being a seeker when you've had a...
Do people have something similar with LSD, what they say, or ayahuasca? Is it?
Yeah, well, very similar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Timeless,
Yeah.
No separation. Because there isn't because I speak about no separation, that's essentially all we're speaking of. When I was going to Tony's regularly and other speakers, I couldn't help but infer that they were experiencing no separation. That's what I always did. And so I always wanted to be where they were. Well, they weren't anywhere. You know, they weren't. I always inferred that they were experiencing no separation. Well, no separation is not experiential.
So the thing
You would have to have someone separate to be experiencing no separation. Isn't that funny? I mean, it's not funny, it's a sick joke. But because I waited, I mean, you know, seemingly in the story, 25 years to actually, it's like complete resignation. The one who was seeking had to completely resign to that can't be experienced. It's not experiential, no separation. There just is no separation to be experienced.
I guess maybe the bodily sensations could make it feel like they're separate from things, like as you feel.
The whole sense of how most human beings feel is separate, yeah. But then, of course, you can only imagine that there would be, if there was no separation, then you would feel not separate. But of course, you wouldn't feel not separate if there's no you to feel not separate. No separation actually doesn't mean anything at all. It's rubbish. There just is no separation. I could say that's why it felt so disappointing, because of course I wanted to feel that experience again. No, there's no knowing of no separation, because there's only knowledge is always of something else. I mean, no separation is nonsense, because it's only referring to separation.
I guess I'm waiting for there to be no separation, right? Then
you wouldn't know. I mean, I do, because
For some obscure reason, I talk about this, and it's just something to do, really. You know, what am I going to do now? I don't know what to do. I'll talk about this, or attempt to. The no separation is that it's emptiness. There is no separation in emptiness. It's completely empty, but equally there's nothing to know. There is no knowledge of emptiness. There's nothing to be known of nothing. So the no separation is that everything that I said was other than me is empty, outside. It's full, but completely empty. What I took to be myself inside is completely empty. And then there's simply no knowing of any difference. Empty inside, empty outside, no inside or outside. Just emptiness. Completely full. Why is it two?
It's two because when there is something appear, the eyes see the appearance.
Ah, yeah.
So
Well, that
two.
yeah. Well, that's, you could say that's the illusion. The illusion is that it's appearing to a subject.
Two men.
Yeah. And where the reality is there's just appearance. That's as close to reality as you're ever going to get. Or the only reality is the appearance. So I don't speak about this as real or unreal. It's equally real and unreal. It's not that. So is this real? Yeah, absolutely. It's the only reality. So the realness is complete. You could say that's the fullness. So is it really happening? Yeah, this is really happening. Really?
What's happening then?
What's really happening? You can't say what's really happening. There's only what's happening. But you don't know what it is. That's just that's layered on the top. That's just story. What's happening is just story. What is happening is real, completely real. Anything you say about it, any thought about it, any knowledge of it, any understanding of it is storytelling. And the stories are beautiful. You know, I've told a story of 30 years ago, and it might be interesting, it might be boring, but it's just a story. Now, because it's 30 years ago, you can all accept it's a story. You can't, self will never accept that what's happening, thoughts of what's happening, understanding of what's happening, knowledge of what's happening is just a story about what's happening, not what's happening. What's happening is utterly, utterly unknowable. With all the knowledge and understanding, regardless of all, whatever you say about it. And by what you say about it, I mean whatever you think you know about it.
So I mean everything which actually there is nothing happening.
Yeah, so the flip side of this being completely real is it's completely unreal. In that anything you say about it is not it. Because it's not an it. There is no this. There is no what's happening.
So is it more just like a reaction and responding? Everything is just reaction? Or?
Yeah, if you like. Of course, that's a story as well, but...
Right.
But yeah, so the real would be... I mean, if it's obvious that human beings are just animals, and you see human beings as animals, there is something about this that
that does occur. Because I can't see you, and there's no doubt that there's no you. I don't see selves. You don't either, by the way. But you might still be under the illusion that you do. Because while there's the powerful conviction that I am, then of course you are. I can't help but infer that. Your reality is real because mine is. Myself is real because yourself is real because I believe in mine. If that goes, then human beings are reactionary animals, sensational beings.
So the me is like an in between, or like it tries to come in between everything, or it puts itself in between everything. Like it infers itself into everything. I would say.
Yeah, you could say it that way. I'd probably say that if then, because self is just within this body, this is me, then there's this space between you and me, which there isn't. There's the appearance of space between the two bodies, but there isn't you and me, and it's just you and me, really. That's, to be honest, that's all we're speaking about. We're talking about me and you being real. And that can, don't ask me how or why, there's no reason, but that can no longer appear. And there isn't anything in its place. So I always imagined how it would be, just like you. I always imagined how it would be without me. Well, incredibly ordinary. Again, that's why you might be disappointed. Unbearably ordinary for me, because what have I been after all my life? I've just wanted to be special. This is the impossibility of specialness. Everything is absolutely equal. Not just human beings, everything. The rocks and the trees. You could say that's the revelation. The rocks and the trees are no different from what I've taken to be myself. The rocks are being rocks. The trees are being trees. Human being is being human. And so you could use the phrase, which some speakers do, that there's only being. Always sounds a little too romantic for my liking, but you could say that, just being. This is just being.
And I guess maybe the me puts a lot of importance on its thoughts and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's very,
well, of course they are. The importance is that they're mine.
Yeah.
All the importance of thoughts and feelings is because they belong to me and what they're saying about me and my journey of becoming. The meaning of them. Thoughts and feelings are absolutely meaningless and empty of any significance. But they're not to me, are they? Because they're saying things about me. They're telling me, the biggest problem that most selves have with feelings is what they are saying about me, where I am, where I'm getting, how are they saying I'm getting closer or further away? To what? You don't know. Whatever you've imagined is your goal. What are they saying? What do they mean? All this meaning, and meaning gives purpose. And then paradoxically, I could also say, and they're more powerful.
Okay.
They have no power, but without the meaning and significance, the
they're raw. They're just because they're just fresh and they're just the reality of them. The reality of them is more real, and that's exactly what self doesn't want. Because I just want to manage them and be able to control them. They're just.
What about this feeling of emptiness? When you were a seeker, did you have this feeling, and then how did that change? Does it continue?
I remember I was always afraid of it. Terrified.
And then,
I could tell you another story. I could tell you the story of, the dying. And it was emptiness that was coming for me.
did you
The
have
dark.
this emptiness
I didn't.
before?
Everyone knows emptiness. All children know. Wouldn't verbalize it necessarily, but it's nothing new. It's not something that, but of course there's nothing to be known about it, but the sense of emptiness. Mm-hmm. But of course there's no place for me in it. That's why there was great terror. I didn't really talk, I wouldn't have said it was emptiness then, I would have said it as the dark, the void, nothingness, the abyss. All those words, of course, they're all words of terror, aren't they? Horror films are full of, scary stories that we scare ourselves with. Human beings are good at scaring themselves with stories of the abyss and the void.
Isn't that what the me is always trying to run away from?
Yeah.
Is that void? It's that because somehow it knows that it represents death to it.
To me, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say the peace is that there's nowhere to run. There's no longer running, and the void is not. The darkness was always benign. How wonderful! I was terrified of the dark as a kid. I slept with the light on. And all spiritual stories are full of light, aren't they? I mean, all spirituality is all about light and darkness. As though light and dark are two. And it's probably the most incredible thing of all, that light and darkness are not two. And so if the light is the darkness, well, there's nothing to fear. And I was always running from the dark, yeah. Which is really the not knowing. Because if you think of why did I have to have the light on as a kid? So I could see. And then if I could see, I could keep myself safe from the monsters. I could see the monsters coming. So it is wonderful not being afraid of the dark. In a very simple, ordinary way, but just not to have that fear. You could say everything is absolutely not, relatively is. It's not an answer. This isn't an answer. It doesn't give any answers. There are no answers, is the answer. We're just talking about the end of questions. That's all. So whatever you've questioned that you think an answer would take you somewhere else. This is unquestionable. This is unquestionably. And then there's unquestionably. Not unquestionably what? No, there's no knowing that. It just this, and it inclusive of all the questions. No one's listening. You want answers. No one. Haven't you asked the questions? And the questions go out. No fucking answer. There's no one interested in your questions other than you. You are the only source of questions. You are the only answer. And there is no you. Say no more. So you ask God for an answer. You ask, the question goes out. You get an answer. That's you. If God answers, it will be silent. Because there is no God. There will be silence. There will be no answer. This is not... It's simply that life doesn't ask questions or give answers. You could say that life doesn't recognize you, and that can feel devastating, you know, that you cannot be seen. And even your nearest and dearest, the ones you love and hold most dear, they really couldn't give a shit either. Isn't that wonderful? It's such a liberating... I mean, it's devastating, but that's hugely liberating. Nobody cares about your questions at all.
But what is also quite strange is once you have a sense of this emptiness, this abyss, hollowness, strangely the happenings continue to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to just touch you and pass by.
Yeah.
Emotions touch, but they go away. They just don't stick.
That's true.
And that is a liberation.
That is.
That is bliss.
You could say that. Yeah, because the emptiness remains, and that's peace. So all the emotions, which can feel more powerful than they used to, because you don't have any recourse to any strategies that you might have used to not feel it, for the feelings not to be fully felt. But feelings are not dangerous. There's the thing. How afraid have you been of feelings? I was terrified of sorrow. You know, if I started crying, the tears would never stop. You know, the sorrow would kill me. Grief would kill me. Love would kill me. Love particularly. And I will say it's very clear that, I mean, I talk about love. There is no love, but tears are love.
Would you say that?
I would. It's brave of me, isn't it?
Very. Really?
Yeah. If unconditional love means, it doesn't mean anything. Now, love doesn't mean anything, but we, you know, for want of a better word, language is so limited, but there is, as opposed to happiness, you know, so there would, a lifetime of happiness, right, good, doing something correct, on the right path, sorrow, sadness, grief, something's wrong. Something needs correcting. Try and escape from. Well, joy and sorrow equally. Love. By love, I mean, you know, equally being as it is. Not wrong is what I mean by love. Probably shouldn't say it. I should never mention love, because, I mean, there's no describing.
Yeah.
Not making sense of it. Really, all I mean is that it's unconditionally, I mean, all of this is love. There is no love. You said it to me earlier. But I don't mean lovely. I mean that everything... Unconditional love doesn't mean anything. It's just a pathetic attempt at saying that everything appears as it appears. Everything is just as it is. There is nothing better. The unconditional. Maybe, I mean, if you prefer, just leave love out of it. But this is unconditional. This unconditionally appears as it appears. And it may
have a sense that that's love. In an absolute way. Unconditionally. This is just, no matter how dreadful it is, and by dreadful I mean the things that I would have called dreadful. Nothing is actually dreadful. The things that I disliked, and because they said to me that life shouldn't be this way, there's something wrong with life. Especially sorrow, sadness. Sadness is maybe the clearest expression of love. Whereas we've made happiness.
It's like for the me, sadness is wrong, isn't it?
Makes it wrong.
And happiness is right.
Yeah. And paradoxically, when sadness is not wrong, there's much more joy.
And sadness is not connected to the me?
No, nothing is. There is no me.
Why the sadness?
So me is just the claiming. Nothing belongs to anyone. None of it is yours. It can feel devastating in the loss of, it feels like losing everything, because of course it was never yours, so there's nothing is lost.
Tim, I once heard you say on the video that you used to have a crush on Sailor Bob. And I just wanted to ask you what happened.
Wow, like all crushes. I don't think I said I had a crush, did I?
You did.
Shit.
Yeah.
That was a moment of madness. A crush. Yeah. But then, I mean, as a seeker, that's how it was for me. Falling in love. Not getting what I wanted. Falling out of love. Looking for a new lover. Yeah, when I was promiscuous, going from one teacher to the next.
Well, when did you realize this wasn't a teaching?
Ah. I'm not sure I ever realized that, actually. Kind of not a realization that there's nothing to realize. It's like a non-realization almost. It's not a realization that there's nothing to learn. It's like growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you could say that. It's like, and yet it's much more childlike. Well, there's a paradox for you. So growing up feels much more like being a child, really. Because the pretense is being an adult. I mean, all the adults you meet, maybe not all, pretty much though, they're all pretending to be in control, which is the sense of being an adult. You don't feel in control as a child. Or there's lots of time when it doesn't feels free. Control is imprisonment. Growing up in the sense of not having dreams anymore. Do you mean that?
I mean more and more relying on truth.
Mm-hmm.
Letting go, letting flow.
Yeah. I mean, I tried letting go,
I would never talk about this as letting go. It's just another thing I might do, that I could do. It's another method. It's another thing. Surrender, acceptance, letting go. Sounds great in theory. In practice, it's the same as holding on, letting go. It's just I can choose to hold on or let go. It's more illusion of empowerment. One of the reasons I say that this is not what you want, because there is no power. You're not even abdicating power to something else. It's that there is no power. Makes sense to me why God's so popular, because I can surrender to God. But then I abdicate my power to God's power, but there's still power, so I still feel comforted by at least something's managing this shit show. Something's in control. Something knows what's going on. Something's planned this. Something's caused this. There's something behind this. Some source. So most selves, in order to relieve the burden of me being the source, will relieve themselves of the burden by giving it to God. However God's envisaged, however source is envisaged, And the reason I don't speak of consciousness or awareness, because for me they're just other words for God. It's the same. There has to be something. This can't be sourceless. Because sourceless is really the end. Because there can be no point, no reason, no purpose without source. And wonderfully, the liberation is not that there are is that there aren't any losers. Of course, there aren't any losers, and that self is terribly afraid of being a loser and has a desire to win. However, every human being has their own fancy of what winning would look like. This is the end of possibility of winning. And freedom from winning is the liberation. There aren't any winners. Oh no, this isn't desirelessness, no. Desire is naturally. Desire is completely otherwise, if desire was dependent on self, then dogs wouldn't have desire, would they? And I've seen dogs, they definitely desire. I don't know how the desire is. I don't know how dog desire is, but it's very obvious that animals desire. And of course, we don't know that dogs don't have a sense of self. But I guess not. What I mean by that is desire is completely natural. So I'm not talking about the end of desire. In a way, desire is more naked. You could say naked desire. Simple. Even with the story, still much more simple, direct. Hunger, thirst, lust, rest. That's pretty much it, actually. Animal. I guess there's no hatred. Hatred is fear. Fear of it's very obvious that what I would have said I hated, there is intense dislike, but that's not hatred. So likes and dislike preferences are more again nakedly clear, you could say. There's no pretense at denying you dislike what is disliked. And that can be with people as well, with human beings. You know, when you meet someone and they haven't spoken or they've said a few words and there's an intense dislike. Not rational. You've got no reason to. What does self do? Self tries to be reasonable and say, give them a chance to make, it's not, it denies the natural, you could say instinctive if you want, reaction. That's more pronounced. But not hatred, because hatred is a story. I hate what they stand for. I hate what they believe. I hate. And it's always in response, hatred is always in response to what I dislike in myself. It's always something that I'm afraid that I might be. Well, that's my sense of hatred anyway. Hatred is always a reflection of what you fear might be true of yourself. Getting a bit psychological there, but I think there's truth in that.
Tim, is it a kind of observing to emptiness?
Observing the emptiness?
Yeah. Who is the observer?
Oh no, there's no observer.
No. So the emptiness is knowing by yourself, or?
I mean, I talk about emptiness quite a lot.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I can't. No, really, genuinely,
Yeah.
I don't see emptiness.
No.
There is nothing to see. Emptiness. I have no words to describe why I would even, or how I could say there is only emptiness. I was waiting to know it. Well, that's the whole point. It's not knowing. So the emptiness really is not knowing. That which can't be known is empty. Emptiness cannot be known. Now, it's ridiculous because the emptiness is everything. And of course, I know everything. Everything that I can name, that's all knowledge is. So I know it. So I discriminate. So I know the door from the wall. So that's known. And equally, simultaneously, that's completely empty. That knowing, the fullness, the thingness, is absolutely nothing. If you ask me how is that known, then it's impossible. The words only take. In trying to convey this, words are futile words. And one of the reasons it's easy to speak about this is because I can't tell you. If I could tell you accurately, then of course I'd be very careful about the words and I'd plan what I was going to say. And I'd also say the same thing every time. There has been thinking about this, that I know some speakers, they're pretty rigid in how they say this, because if you thought some words could be closer to the truth, closer to reality, then you would want to be precise about it. But this couldn't give a shit about precision at all. And you can't be precise about nothing. No. And that's everything. And so then all the words, all communication's liberated. Everything is liberated. Words are liberated. Thoughts are liberated. Feelings are liberated. Perception is liberated. It's no big deal. I know you want it to be a big deal. This is not a big deal in the sense of it won't be a dramatic difference in experience. Experiences are incredibly ordinary, wonderfully so. I would say if you ever wanted to speak about this, there's no need to be afraid to speak about this. Your words are just as accurate as anyone else's. They're not yours, but no one's closer. No one knows more because knowledge is irrelevant. Isn't that wonderful? It's probably the only topic where no one knows more or less. So although the setup appears that you've come to listen to me because I'm the font of all wisdom, of course, and this is so familiar to me, this is, my experience of my life is me sitting at the front and all the stupid kids out in front of me, that's you lot, waiting for me to impart my wisdom. And it doesn't feel like that at all. Although the setup is just the same. Because of course I did have knowledge to impart to them. That was my job. And now my job, this job, is trying to impart that I have nothing to impart, which, I mean, it's comical. And that no one else does either. Especially yourself. That one. The most precious one. That's the one who knows the least. The one who wants to know. The one who thinks he already knows. But not enough. Never enough. Is it ever enough for me? Oh, this is never enough. Not enough. Hilariously tragic that virtually the whole of humanity lives in the sense of not enough and poverty. And irony of ironies, this complete poverty is all the riches. I got goosebumps with that. It's just like that. I mean, there isn't anything else. You won't get anything more. There isn't anything more. No more. So it's outrageous. So outrageous. No more. No less. Including of all the dreams and thoughts of more or less. And so that's the unconditional love. The unconditional love is that there is, the unconditionality is that there's nothing else. And that nothing is excluded. There's nothing that could be excluded from nothing.
I had a question yesterday that I kind of formulated quite chaotic, kind of, right? But could you, it's about if, it's just curiosity still, right? To eliminate things and to see what is possible, what's not. For another awakening, it seems like, can you eliminate that possibility that Tim Cliss or whatever is suddenly will say, my God, did this also exist?
No, of course no, it doesn't even come up to eliminate.
But it is possible.
Well, this is, I mean, there's no greater paradox. This is all possibilities and no possibility at all. Because possibility is the illusion of what could come. And that is impossible. There is nothing to come. So there is no possibility, but the appearance appears exactly as it appears, which is any possibility at all. So this is all possibilities and no possibility. So then thoughts of that, I mean, all thoughts like that, or any others about what is possible, It's just escapism. It's just trying to, this isn't satisfying, so let's imagine. Oh yeah, I'll go for that. Which is also just what's happening, but there's no awakening.
No, but still.
Really? There's only, this wide awake. You could say there's only awakening, there's no awakening.
Yeah.
But there is no one to awaken, and all stories of awakening are for the one who might be sleeping and could wake up. There's no one to wake up. This is wide awake. Unless it's deep asleep, I guess. But then I know fuck all about that. I don't know about you. When people talk about deep sleep, I'm always amazed. What do you know of that? What's your experience of deep sleep? Oh no, dreaming. I don't mean dreaming. No, dreaming's a different thing. I mean, what I call sleep, not dreaming. Dreaming's kind of awake, kind of. But deep sleep was nothing. That's for me. So we know what the void is. We all know it, and what we know is we know nothing of it. Undoubtedly, we don't know anything of deep sleep. We all know that already. So this is exactly the same. A human body, awake, not asleep. The void, the emptiness of deep sleep doesn't disappear, you could say, when there is appearance. The appearance is absolutely empty. You don't know how long you've been asleep. Well, there isn't any time. There is no space. There is no time. There are no things. There is no appearance. Nothing happens. Blank. And how do we long for that blank? There isn't a human being who doesn't long for sleep, doesn't long to die. We love death. Now here's the thing. Human beings love death, adore it.
What do you say?
In a very nothing neutral. When I say adore it, not in. Just adore is not the right word, but long for it, long for nothing. There's nothing worse than being tired and not being able to sleep. It's torture. For every, it's universal. There aren't many things that we can share as human beings and everyone nods their head. That is one. The love of sleep. And love's not too strong a word for that. And you long not to be here. You long for absence. You long for death. This is death alive. No, not two. Because nothing can't go anywhere. There's nowhere for emptiness to come and go from or to. There's only, it's complete. So I don't say it that much, but I do still, like other speakers, talk about wholeness and completeness. And the wholeness is the emptiness. The appearance is still appearing separate. There's things in appearance. That still appears. Things still appear. The fullness appears as what seems to be happening. But the emptiness hasn't gone anywhere. It's just not noticeable. There's nothing to notice. But the fullness, nearly every human being is preoccupied with the fullness. That's all. The emptiness is ever present. Don't ask me how. And how is it obvious? I don't know. But if it's obvious, you'll go, how on earth was it not obvious? If it's obvious. And it doesn't come and go. So all appearances they kind of don't even come and go. The illusion is that they remain for any length of time. That's the illusion. So appearances appear and disappear simultaneously. There is no continuity. There is no time.
Where is the emptiness in deep sleep?
Well, emptiness isn't anywhere. There's no location. The thing is, you can't say anything about it. That's how it feels. I mean, I can't say anything about deep sleep. I think anyone who says anything about it you've got to be making that up.
But we like it.
We love it.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. Not really. Well, there's nothing to do. You long to not have. So
how do you know there's nothing to do?
Self is so terrified of the void, of there being no well, there isn't. It's worse than nothing to do. There's nothing. But it's completely at peace and at rest. And of course, self longs for rest and peace. And looks for it everywhere when it's ever present. And of course, you can't find it because it's not anywhere else. And so there's lots of spiritual stories of you're looking for. What you're looking for is, traditionally, is yourself. But that never resonated for me. It always seemed ridiculous. It was very clear always that I was the problem. Problems were mine. And don't fantasize that without yourself there wouldn't be problems. But there is a massive difference between problems and my problems. Problems are really only a problem because they're mine. Just think how you're not really that interested in anyone else's problems, are you? That tells you all you want to know. The problem with problems, the suffering with problems, is they're mine. They belong to me. They say everything about me. They scream of my failure and my inadequacy, my incompetence, my incompletion. That dreadful. And so it's not that problems are exactly the same, but they're really not a problem if they're not mine. And interestingly, your problems are less of a problem for me because I always resent having to sort your problems out. I've got my own fucking problems. Don't give me your problems. You can find it's very easy to listen to other people's problems and probably help them, seemingly, in the story, help them very easily because you're not preoccupied with your own stack of shit.
So, in this, once you have a sense of this unknowing, call it what you may, you are dealing with people on a daily basis. And the dilemma is, there seems to be a charade, like a facade that one needs to project to be able to get along with life. Because if you were to constantly speak about this nothingness, the beauty within it, people will start throwing stones at you. And they think you're a little crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
And the dilemma is, how does one navigate through human interaction? So, of course, whatever is meant to happen will happen, but this thought just came and
Yeah, because it sounds like a dilemma, doesn't it? But it's not. I don't speak of this to anyone unless they ask me. Now, there was a period when I was a little excited and evangelical, where I did tell people who didn't ask me for my great wisdom. I just needed to tell them. And I got stoned, as you put it. And all I can say is that it may feel a dilemma until it's not a dilemma. It's just very... Because this is not of benefit, and it can only be heard if it can be heard. So, I mean, if I'm giving advice, I always say, well, only speak of this to those who ask about it. And then most people, if they ask me about it, so what are you doing now you're not teaching? And I tell them briefly, well, immediately within 10 seconds, I know whether they're... Because you just glaze over. It's like it was nothing. No. And then I'm not going to say anymore. But you don't have to say... I usually say something like philosophy or... I sometimes even... I mean, you couldn't get a bigger lie than this. I sometimes say it's kind of spiritual, psychological, and philosophical. And that usually stops people right there. Say those 3 words. Say those 3 words together, and most people go, fucking hell. Shit, don't ask him anything else. Oh, and then I add, oh, and it's a little bit autobiographical. Which there's a shred of truth in all of those. But it's enough to put most people off asking you anything else. But I never actually tell them. Because they don't, I'm very certain they don't want to know. It's only being polite, you know, old friends, acquaintances. And that happens frequently. But it's not a dilemma when someone asks you for practical, you know, in their story, for practical help. It may sound as though it would be a dilemma because you'd give them some non-dual platitudes and they should be happy with that. Surely that should satisfy them. But that's not what they're asking, you know. It's like saying somebody asks for a glass of water and you give them beer. Well, they've asked for water. Why would you give them what they don't want? It's very natural.
So the dilemma more is that you need to be projecting a sort of a facade at all times. So that's
me.
That bothers me, for instance. You know, I feel there is somebody else who's standing in place of me, doing a different kind of talking, just so you're on the same page with people. You know, you need to not say what you feel and think about things. You have to be another person.
Oh, that is hard work doing that. Because you have to be vigilant and checking. I've said a lot of things about this that you don't want. Here's something you want. I've not given you many positives. The absence of self-consciousness. The total non-awareness of yourself. I always think it's interesting, in English there's two ways of speaking about knowing yourself. One is self-consciousness, which is a negative, used as a negative term, and self-awareness, which is what most people pursue as the positive. Well, they're both the fucking same thing. So as you pursue self-awareness, of course, what are you doing? Becoming more and more self-conscious. Obviously. So there are so many seekers pursuing self-awareness, ever increasing, and feeling feeling much better about themselves because I'm much more self-aware than ever I was. You probably haven't noticed, but I have, how self-aware I am now. You're probably feeling the benefits, even though you don't know, of my own self-awareness. But then, of course, there's this terrible thing called self-consciousness, which is the illusion that you can see me. It's funny that we call it self-consciousness, but really self-consciousness is the fear that because I can see myself, I'm consciously aware of myself, your self-awareness there can be aware of my consciousness here. You can see me. Well, you can't see me. I don't doubt that you can't see me. There's fuck all to see. You can see the body, you can hear the voice. That's it. It's so simple, outrageously simple. Now that is the truth. Now I don't know that is how it is for these bodies, but that is how it is, isn't it? Because I'm pretty much sure, all bodies work the same. Just human beings. And then that sameness, that simplicity, again, feels like unconditional love. The delusion is that there's yourself over there that's aware of myself over here, and I'm terrified that you might actually see. So I'm telling you a story, it's bullshit, and you might know I'm lying. I've got the facade of confidence and being self-assured, but really I'm shitting my pants and I feel like a tiny little crying child inside, and you might be aware of that. It's great suffering. Self-consciousness is hideous. I remember it well. I mean, I remember early in my life as a teacher being just the fighting, the absolute terror of self-consciousness, of standing. It's the number one fear for self, is public speaking.
Would you say that self-consciousness and shame is kind of
Oh, absolutely.
the same?
Well, all of that, shame, guilt, shame and guilt, yeah. And blame, of course. Blame's is only just the flip side of shame.
Yeah.
Responsibility. Somebody's got to be at fault. Otherwise, the purposeless, the causelessness of everything is dreadful for me. So I need it to be, if not someone's responsibility, everything that happens, particularly if things go wrong, then if I don't have a cause, if I don't have blame, if I don't have responsibility, then everything that just randomly appears is unthinkable because it's too free. I think it's quite, I shouldn't say this, I was going to say it's quite useful to admit that you don't want freedom. Self doesn't want freedom.
And do you think then that shyness and timidity can be kind of natural?
Absolutely natural.
For an animal.
Oh no, absolutely. Well, yeah. Well, you get two dogs. One's a shy dog. One's an outgoing dog. Yeah. No, I think. Now this is So liberation is for the character, for the natural human being, for the animal to be as it is, without trying to be otherwise, trying to present itself in a certain way. So, as you were saying, Rita, about trying to... There is no facade. Without self-consciousness, there can be there's no one to put the facade on. You need a face to put the facade on, to show your best face. Well, you don't have a face. Really, the face in the mirror is not yours. These are my worries, aren't they? Well, they're not. It's natural. So it's not that there's no anxiety. So one of the things that you may have imagined there would be no anxiety at all. Well, that's not true. Whilst there are any thoughts of a future, about a future, no matter that it's illusory, there's thoughts about it, then there can be anxiety about, will it be as I've imagined it to be and I've planned it to be? I think it's just that it's natural. Self is generally very afraid of sadness.
Afraid of showing.
And in the story, in the fullness of life, everything is always being lost. So there is really no escape from sadness. This isn't spoken about much. This isn't a panacea to not feel the loss of everything. This is the loss of everything, always. And it's not that feel the loss of everything and then you're done with the loss of everything. Everything is always being lost as it's found. There is nothing, you've heard it. All speakers talk about there's nothing to hold on to. There is no. So you lose all that you said is yours. That's not the end of it. You want this to be a resting place, to be the end. So that's, you're done. It's done with loss. No. This is birth and death. So this is always new, always passing away. Everything is always being lost. Loss is constant. Constant death, constant renewal, not two. This is the first. This is brand new. This is the only. And as it's born, it's gone. The illusion is the space in between. This is always being born. The majority of human beings can't hear any of this. It's just nonsense. Well, because it's nonsense to say there isn't a me. I mean, the whole foundation of this life for most selves, self is undeniable. I mean, if I deny it, it's just so stupid. It's so wildly untrue to them, unimaginable, unthinkable, that it doesn't even register. Then to some selves you mention it, and there is a little bit of that does register, and then there's a reaction against it powerfully, and there's anger and resentment and fear. So they must have heard something of it in order for there to be the reaction. And then for just a few, that's you lot and me, we heard it and went, oh shit. Oh shit, yeah. Oh fuck, yeah. Oh fucking hell. Shit. Of course. It's like an absolute recognition. Then of course there's, well, and then There can be euphoria, or there can be like, oh shit, no, it's too much and I won't be able to function, and then there can be fear about it and any kind of reaction. But it's undeniable that you hear this message. I remember the first time. And there's an undeniable yes rather than either no or what a load of shit. Like it's just nonsense. It's gobbledygook. If I speak to most of my friends about this, my old friends, it wouldn't touch them. Nothing would be heard. Oh, how comes? I know nothing how it comes. No, I know nothing about how come.
So weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it seems like this is only, I'm not trying to make you feel special, but there's only a few of us. There's only a few of us chosen ones. You, my blessed people, who can hear this. Now that just seems, I'm not saying that as special at all, but there are. You are the chosen few. Oh, I can't resist it sometimes. But all I simply mean is it can only be heard if it can be heard, that's all. How, I have no idea. Why, I've got an answer to that. Definitely no reason at all. No reason whatsoever. It's not advantageous. It's not advantageous. This is not giving you anything. And yeah, I wish it for everyone. There you go. I mean, how funny is that? You're not going to get anything from it. It will give you nothing. It will seemingly take rather only. There's nothing given. Because everything that is given is already given. There's nothing extra. But seemingly, there can be quite a bit taken away. That's not true either. But it can feel like that. This is only loss in the story. No gain. There's nothing to be gained. Is what's gained. So that's the prize. Fucking hell. The prize is what already is.